Tonight, Green Arrow goes full soap opera, and I absolutely love it. Swamp Thing shows us why alcohol is the cause of and solution to all of life's problems, and if you had immortality, how would you spend it? In Pandora's case, pretty much wasted. All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 96 of the Not So New 52. I am your host and it is the day before American Independence Day, July 3rd, 2023 or 13, depending on whether or not you want to pretend like this show was actually in the past. But one thing I did want to bring up for the sake of this recording is that I am doing this over the weekend of the 1st and 2nd, which because of that, there's a bunch of fireworks going off. People just can't wait for the actual night of. So if you happen to hear any of those in the very far distant background of the recordings, I apologize, but I was not about to wait until they were done. So take it or leave it. Additionally, one weird little thing I've been sitting on for like a week and I really wanted to share is that I was driving down the road and you know those signs for businesses that usually say like, oh, come in for our Monday special or whatever, like the ones that you can switch out with different messages. I was driving past one of them and it said, quote, America, the only country with a known birthday. And immediately that struck me as just the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Like, how American-centric do you have to be to think that you're the only country on planet Earth to have a known Independence Day? Like, the balls of that country to go that far, or that company, I should say, to go that far in their claim. Like, it's either someone who's so just ridiculously patriotic that they genuinely think that's true, or they're an idiot and didn't think that any other country on earth has ever declared independence, especially from Britain, which is a ballsy claim in its own right. But I've been sitting on that for a week because it's been bothering me so much. The fact that somebody thought that was true. Insanity. Anyway, at some point in this show, we'll become a comics podcast. And when we get there, I got some comics to talk about, including Batman Incorporated, Batwing, Detective Comics, Action Comics, Green Lantern, Earth 2, Green Arrow, The Movement, Stormwatch, Dial H, Phantom Stranger, and Swamp Thing. But additionally, we have a brand new number one this week, and it is the namesake of the episode. We have Trinity of Sin, Pandora number one, which is also the prologue to Trinity War, which will be starting in earnest next week. But prologue's kind of important. It tells you why we're doing the things we're doing, why there is a Trinity War to begin with, so worth checking out, and also why I'm going to be doing it first. So let's not waste any more time with my random-ass tangents into company billboards and jump right into Pandora. Trinity of Sin, Pandora number one, written by Ray Fawkes, art by Daniel Sampere, Zander Cannon, and Patrick Zircher. For all future issues of this, I'm just calling it Pandora because Trinity of Sin is a stupid family name. So this is the origin story of Pandora, which of course is the central character in the whole DCU, and this is also a prelude to Trinity War, but only in so much as Pandora's a major player there, so we need to figure out who the hell is she. So we open up in prehistoric Macedonia 8,000 years ago, and someone's saying that they have waited 3 million days just to be able to tell this story to you. And we see this ancient tribe, there's a young child who's sick, and a woman is like, oh, don't worry, we've got medicines as good as we can here in the 8,000s, just keep them here, I'll go out in the forest and take care of it. And this woman goes out into the forest and she sees a bright red light out there. And as she approaches closer, she sees the box. It is not currently Pandora's box, but as soon as she sees it, she's immediately just overtaken with its power and the 7 sins come out of it. envy, greed, all that stuff. And she passes out and the box seems to be spent. So some time passes, she stumbles back to her tribe, and the seven sins have killed everyone there. And as she's staring on, horrified, they're like, "Oh, hey, Mom, glad you came back." And she's like, "No, I didn't do this." But as she's freaking out about it, she's almost immediately teleported in front of the Wizards Council. And I think this happened in like a Zero issue somewhere. Maybe it was like Shazam. I don't know. Regardless, she's teleported in front with the other two members of the Trinity of Sin, the Question and Phantom Stranger. And they're like, "Pandora, you suck so hard." And she's like, "I don't even know what I did." And it's like, "Well, too bad. You feign ignorance." And so they sentence her that she has scars now on her face that burn no matter what. And she is forced to live forever to see what these evils she released on mankind have done. So she takes time as soon as she gets back to bury all of the dead of her tribe. And she just like hangs out there for many, many years, until finally the forest overgrows, and so she starts to walk, and she sees what all of the sins have been doing around the world in the meantime, and she sees, wars going on, and people killing over money and items and stuff, so wrath, envy, and greed, and she's just like, I'm gonna stop you all, I'm gonna do that, and the sins are just like, "Mom, you can't, you don't have any power, you are literally powerless to stop us, bye-bye now." So she goes around, and her whole thing is that she's basically trying to protect people from the things. And they have little places that they've been and like the years that she was there as well, but who really cares? So she's trying to just basically protect people. And it's like, oh, if I can't stop them, I'll at least save whoever I can. But it's like one for every several thousand, so not doing great. And as she's chilling out, super sad one day, Pride shows up and is like, "Mom, look, we get it. Like, you're not a huge fan of us, but we don't care. We're grateful that you let us out of the box. And we would, if you just stopped fighting against what we want to do, we would gladly crown you our queen." And she's like, "No, I will never do that. I will find the power to destroy you." And she's like, "Okay, whatever, Mom." So then she went around and she's like, "All right, just saving people is enough. I have to try to stop them. I have to try to stop people from being bad in the first place." So she goes around all these different places and is basically like, "Everyone, listen, doing bad things is bad." And everyone just kind of like smacks her down and just like, "Stop being clearly, but we're going to do it anyway." So she walks through, and at this point she reaches the, 0 year epoch. So she goes into 44 B or AD, 113 AD, and she starts learning like magic and stuff like that, and how to reach beyond the spiritual realm, because she feels like that's what's necessary in order to make an impression here. Until finally she reaches the Crusades, and she tries to jump in the middle, being like, "Everyone stop, it's not right." And as she's sitting there, she gets hit with a sword. Obviously, she can heal immediately. Nothing can kill her. But we see that the person who hits her with a sword is Vandal Savage. And Vandal's like, "Hey, wait, I've seen you around. You keep on telling people not to fight. You're like kind of stupid like that." And he says like, "No, I've heard stories about you though. You are the mother of all evil. Like, you're the one who's responsible for all that." So yeah, he basically calls her out for how much evil she is. And she's like, "I'm nothing like you and your kind." And he's like, "Okay, well, you're an immortal like me, so you're kind of like me." So at that point, Pandora decides, all right, if I can't beat him, I'm going to join him. I'm going to learn to fight so good, using my spiritual abilities as well, I can kick all those sins' asses and kill the sins themselves. So she learns all this super fighting stuff, and we cut to modern day, where she gets herself some real fancy weapons that she believes will be able to actually kill these sins. It's like 2 custom pistols and this weird sickle looking thing, a chain and weight, she said, that's made out of a special metal. And so she's almost sniped by the spirit of Wrath, and then she manages to escape, gets up on the rooftop where Wrath is. She's about to start her big battle, and then she's teleported away. And it turns out it's the wizard Shazam, who teleported her away, and he's like, hey, Pandora, did I get you at a bad time? And she's like, yes. And he's like, I'm sorry about that. Look, I'm literally dying after the events of the Shazam book. Here's the thing. We were wrong. You were just a young, curious woman. You didn't mean to let out the sins. That's on us. We're very sorry. And she's like, oh, are you going to free me from my punishment? And he's like, nah, I'm too weak to do that. But I can tell you that you will be free of your punishment if you can get all the sins back in the box. And Pandora's like, oh, is that... Clearly, I haven't been trying that for the past 10,000 years. Sorry. And he's like, all right, well, what you need to do is the box will only open to someone who is the strongest of heart or the darkest of hearts. One or the other will open up that box. So go ahead and find that one. And he's just like, all right, bye. And he just disappears in a lightning bolt because that's how he dies. So Pandora collapses, and she then is just like, all right, fine. In this age of superheroes, clearly I need to find a superhero, because they're going to have the ones that are strongest of heart, and I know just where to start. And we see the Superman logo. So tune in to Trinity War, where she's going to go try to get Superman to open up a box. I mean, it's a fine origin, but it's just so, like, basic, I guess. Like, for someone who has this centerpiece focal point of the DCU ascribed to her, of, like, this is the most important thing, you'd think the origin story would be better than, I did something bad in my past and now I'm trying to atone for it. Because that's, like, 85% of all anti-heroes. And, like, I need something more than that. On top of that, her abilities don't seem to be anything outside of she's immortal and also learned, like, some very basic-ass magic. Like, that's it. So, yeah, Pandora's not that notable as of now. I'm not saying this was a horrible issue. It was fine. But it's just, like, the character as a whole is lacking. So the issue could never be that great to begin with. Overall, I don't know. I'll give this one I'll give it a 6.5, because for what it does well. It's trying to give her origin, and it does it, and it sets up for Trinity War. I'm down with all that. No problems. It's just that the character herself is boring, so I can't really get it above a 6.5 for a story that is literally all about her. Batman Incorporated number 12, written by Grant Morrison, art by Chris Burnham. So last issue, Batman decided to take some... Well, okay, last issue was technically an interstitial issue. But the issue before that, Batman decided to take some Batman serum, and he is flying in to attack Talia with a whole army of just bats. So he's flying in. Talia's like, oh dear Lord, what is... He's just not going to stop, is he? He's that crazy. And so she commands her army to start shooting down the bats and Batman, and all the man-bats take off as well. Batman does a scree, and all the bats start attacking the man-bats, which apparently they all hold the antidote, so they all start just falling out of the sky, seemingly to their deaths. And Batman, he just swoops in, grabs Heretic, which is, of course, the large creature that follows around Talia and killed Damian, and just grabs him up into the air, throws him back down to the ground, just like, you once told me that nothing human can defeat you. I am no longer human, and you killed my son, so let's get this on. And he electrifies him, starts throwing punches, because he's also wearing a pretty heavy exoskeleton as well, and Heretic keeps fighting back. He's like, I'm gonna beat you up, old man. And he's like, yeah, watch this. Batman presses a button and turns invisible, which is, I guess, part of his exoskeleton, starts beating up Heretic as best he can. And he pushes Heretic off of a building, and he just so happens to land on a blimp where Batman lands. And he's like, oh, is that your jetpack doesn't work anymore? That's too bad. And he keeps on calling him old man this whole time, and Batman's like, that's right, you were aged up artificially in a vat. You're just a child. I can beat the crap out of a child. You think I won't? And he's just like, I'm more than a kid. I'm gonna be the new Batman, and there's nothing wrong with my jetpack. And he grabs Batman, flies up into the air. They crash through an office building, go the whole way through, and then I guess his jetpack stops working again as they crash down onto a school bus. So then we put a stopper in all that. And if you remember in the other issue as well, Wingman got taken by a spy group or something and was being convinced that they're actually good guys. And we see Nightwing and Red Robin have tracked down Wingman there. They see the doors opening up and a bunch of people wearing skull masks, and they're like, okay, skull mask, those are enemies. Skull mask means bad. And then they see Wingman stepping out, and he's like, guys, I can explain. And he basically lays down everything that they said before with the added thing of, this is a spy network, and Hood was actually a double agent working for the spy network, but the spy networks are good guys. And they're saying that, like, this is way above Batman Incorporated. This is, like, significantly higher scale, and we need to let them just do their thing, and Batman Incorporated needs to step aside. And, well, not step aside, but stop the Doomsday device, and then they'll take care of the rest. And Nightwing's like, I can't see you, shadowy head figure, but you sure do sound familiar. And she's like, oh, you've grown so much, but nevertheless, you don't know me. So, turns out when they crash into the school bus, a bunch of the Leviathan kids are there, and Batman continues to beat up Heretic, and he tells all the kids, like, see how I just beat him up? That's the guy you're following. You all need to rethink your lives. Okay, bye. And so he heads back out. We see Nightwing and Knight have a ride, and they each have reasons to equally hate Heretic, so they jointly beat the crap out of him and shatter his helmet. And as Batman steps up, Heretic down on the ground holds him up and he's like, you killed my son. You look at me. You look at me in the eyes. And we see Heretic, because he was artificially aged up, he got a baby face. Like, he looks like a 5-year-old. And he's, like, missing an eye. And he tells Batman, like, oh, you say I killed your son. Sons are meant to die in war. And Batman's like, all right, well, I thought I could do this, but that is just too much for me. That's gross. So Heretic starts to crawl away and then run away. Knight wants to finish the job because the previous Knight was killed by Heretic. So she's like, no, let me at him. I'll totally kill him if you won't. And as they're going to chase after him, the W off of the Wayne building is struck by lightning and, like, crashes down in front of them, so they can no longer enter the building. So up on top, Talia's like, look, if you disappoint me or go against my orders again, I swear to God, I have dozens of other people who could fill in for you, Heretic. Like, don't test me. And he starts yelling and whining, like, he said that you were just using me, and he hit me. And so Talia has enough, slices his head off with her sword, and is like, I warned you. All right, let's start the final thing here. So she gets into a helicopter, presses the big red button, and says, all right, lights out. This is the fall of the House of Wayne. And Wayne Tower just explodes. It's just gone. And we see Nightwing is starting to explain the situation to Bruce, saying, like, hey, look, there's a spy thing. They just want us to take care of the Ouroboros thing. And Batman's like, okay, well, that doesn't leave me in charge, so Batman Incorporated is going to take care of it. So we see Talia arrive at Wayne Manor. The door to the back cave is just wide open, so she makes her way down. She's wearing Batman's cape and, like, a makeshift cowl. She's got swords on her, and just like, all right, this is it, you and I, to the death. And next issue is the final issue of the series, not counting a special, which we will also get to. But, I mean, it feels kind of big. I think that the biggest issue I have right now is that it feels like they've done the big thing. Because the next big thing is Talia launching a Doomsday device that will destroy the world. And that's just a bit too big, you know, for a Batman story. Like, it doesn't feel like that's ever actually going to happen. But blowing up Wayne Tower, that feels like the finale. That feels like this is it. This is the biggest thing I'll do. So I don't know how the fight's going to go between the two of them. I don't know how this spy organization's going to wrap into all this within the next issue. Maybe it won't. Maybe it's just set up future things. But either way, it's an okay book. It's an okay issue overall. Gross as hell when it comes down to Heretic. Really does sell that. But this issue is more or less just an extended fight scene. But it works. It works because we've been building up to this fight for pretty much like a year now, I think. Since Robin died, it's been pretty close. So I'm all right with it. I think it was fine. I'll give this one a 7.5 overall, and I'm looking forward to the final issue next month. Detective Comics number 22, written by John Layman, art by Jason Fabok. So, pretty much just a new arc, more or less. We open up with Batman having guns trained on him, and we explain how did we get here. So, turns out there were two cops. They were just on patrol, and one of them saw Batman's Batjet in the sky, and Batman jumping out, and they're like, well, his stupid cape, we decided, yeah, there's probably going to be trouble over there, whether it's him or someone else, so let's go and investigate. So they make their way over down this alley, and they hear two shots ring out, and the radio goes dead. And it turns out there were two cops already down this alley who are now dead. And so they see Batman standing over the body, and they just open fire. They shoot at Batman. Turns out it's Gordon who's doing this little interview with the cops afterwards. And he's like, did you shoot at Batman? And he's like, yeah, I shot at him. And I mean, nothing connected because he's Batman. But regardless, he took us down and he told us that we're making a big mistake and that's not what it looks like. But I think Batman is evil like that. So at that point, Gordon's like, okay, first things first, Batman didn't kill those cops. Secondly, he would have killed you if he had the ability to. Third off, Batman probably was protecting you from walking into the same trap that these cops walked into. So fourth off, mind your own business, officer. And so he says, all right, there's a cop killer. It ain't Batman, but it might look like Batman because the officers called in over the radio right before they were shot that it looks like Batman. So cop killer, Batman on the loose. So we then cut to later on. Bruce Wayne is flying onto the helipad of a building that is labeled with Caldwell Tech, saying how he doesn't like the man they're going to see, and Alfred's the one piloting, and it's like, oh, just give him a shot, see what he has to say. So they get off the plane, and we meet E.D. Caldwell, who likes to be called E.D. or Ed. I don't like any of those names, so I'll call him Caldwell. And he's basically like, hey, yeah, no, great to meet you, Bruce Wayne. And Bruce is like, oh, well, I would welcome you to Gotham, but it seems to me you've already bought all the ad space in our equivalent of Times Square. And he's like, yeah, you know me, businessman. So here's the deal. I want to buy Wayne Tech. What do you say? And Bruce is like, no. He's like, all right, sweeten the deal. I'll add an extra 0 to it. And he says, no, sorry, I'm not for sale. And Caldwell just basically goes on the whole capitalist thing of like, everything's for sale for enough money. And Bruce says respectfully, no, bye. And so he gets in his helicopter and flies away. And apparently his whole thing is that Caldwell Tech is a weapons manufacturer. They further wars and stuff like that, and Batman is not interested in having his company do that. So Alfred then steps in and is like, well, to play devil's advocate, all of the profits that he gets, he like funnels into improvement programs for the city. Like he's already given millions of dollars to Gotham, and he's barely been here for a few weeks. So he's not that bad of a guy, Bruce. And Bruce is like, I'm sorry, you got something to say? He's like, just think maybe you might be a bit jealous is all. And so Batman then takes off and says, I'm going to go hunt that cop killer now. Think about what you said. So we see a random ass dude with a stupid like single lens headpiece, and he's being told, all right, go out there and make them suffer the way you suffered. Your name is Scorn. Which is not a smart name, but regardless, he crashes down onto a cop car, immediately opens fire, but it turns out, because of the events that happened last time, all the cops are buddy patrolling. So there's another cop car literally right next to it, and they open up fire on the guy who killed those cops. And then Batman just immediately comes in on the Batmobile, which is literally just the tumbler. Like, it doesn't look anything else. It's just the tumbler. And so it crashes down. And Scorn's like, oh, geez, you shouldn't be here yet. I'm out. And he starts to run away. Turns out one of the cops that got shot was, the other cop's like, oh, God, my partner. He would have been dead if it weren't for their sweet new Caldwell anti-bullets, like, protective vests. Those are super awesome. And Batman's like, yeah, okay. I'll see you around then. Don't get too used to those vests, though. So he calls up Gordon, tells all the cops, look, stay out of the area. This guy's got a weird, problem going on. He's dressed up in a cape like me. This is clearly one of my things. Just stay back and I'll take care of this. And Gordon's like, can do, Batman. So Scorn's running. He's freaking out because, again, Batman is not supposed to be on his tail for whatever reason. And he's basically just trying to waste time until his boss can come pick him up. And Batman sees this. He stops Scorn midway, and we see that one of the cops, the cop who didn't get shot, has managed to chase them across rooftops all the way down into this alley and holds a gun to Scorn's head and basically says, like, I'm going to shoot him for what he did to those other cops in the car. Not my partner, but the other cops. And Batman says, no, like the number of killers and whatnot. And he basically manages to distract her long enough for a giant bat jet plane-esque looking thing to show up and unleash a hail of bullets on them, long enough for Scorn to get pulled up on the ladder. And Batman's like, all right, well, thanks for that, officer. Now I got to figure out where to go from here because I have absolutely no leads. Except he sees the gun that Scorn dropped and he decides to go with it from there. So then we see Scorn inside the helicopter, and he's just like, I'm sorry, boss, I failed. I'll do better next time. And boss is like, no, dude, you think I'm letting you back out there? You sucked. And, like, don't get me wrong, Batman getting in the way was a problem. But because of the way you acted tonight, my years of planning might have all been put at risk. You are a liability. Therefore, goodbye. And we see him crush this guy's like helmet in his hands, pick him up and throw him off the helicopter and say, Batman shall know my wrath. And wrath is written in special font, so you know that's his name. And we do get a little extra bit in there somewhere of them saying, like, oh, this guy was like arrested 3 or 4 times, police brutality numerous times, so he had a bone to pick with cops, and that's the whole reason Wrath picked him. Doesn't seem to really play into it, though. So either way, Wrath is kind of looks like Batman a little bit. He's on the cover of this. Not really, but maybe in the dark. So, good enough intro. I'm all right with it. The fact that he's a cop killer at least sets him off differently than just your general homicidal maniac, but only a little bit. I want to see them really play into this idea of Batman versus Wrath versus the cops. Have it be like a 3-way thing where nobody is really okay with any of the other ones, but they all still have to play nice. Like Batman has to play nice with the cops, and the cops also have to play nice with Batman. I like when they investigate that, because it's weird. It is weird when Gordon has just all authority handed over to Batman, says, you do whatever you need to do. I feel like if I were a cop, I would be like, seriously, man? That's not okay. But they never really explore that. So overall, I'm going to give this I don't know. It feels just like a core 7. It's not amazing, it's not great, but it is still a solid enough issue. The only issue I really have with it is that Wrath and Scorn are stupid names. They're just not clever names. It's just like they solely have those names so that Wrath can say the line of, quote, Batman will soon experience my full wrath. Like, it just feels like he's trying to work, like it's a party trick. He's just trying to work it into every line he can. So yeah, 7. Batwing number 22, written by Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Eduardo Pansica. So last issue, after a whole lot of other stuff, we have Luke Fawkes return home, and apparently his house is being swarmed with the Marabunta, which just look like ant people. And this issue, they just crash in. He's still on the phone with Batman. They just bust in the house, and he's like, Jesus Christ, Batman, they're already here. I gotta go. And he's wondering how they found him, because nobody should know he's Batwing yet. But as they continue to swarm the house, all of his family members are being attacked. He puts up a pretty good fight, and everyone's just, like, all the Marabunta are like, oh, Jesus, this guy's actually a pain in the ass. Can we take him down? And he's just like, take me down. Yeah, you and what army? And then one of them just pulls out a laser gun and shoots him. And it's one of those, like, concussive ones, so it doesn't actually kill him, despite the fact it obviously should. So, as everyone else is being swarmed, Lucius yells out, like, all right, security system, attack the Marabunta. You know, not directly like that, but more or less. And so these electric rods all start coming out of the ground and tasing them. Meanwhile, Lucius and his wife have been gassed, so they're knocked out and easier to grab. And one of the Marabunta says, like, all right, target acquired, let's get out of here. And Luke is like, wait a minute, hold on, target acquired? That means they weren't coming after me. Ah, crap, that means they were going after my dad. Yeah, all right, that makes sense, my bad. So he runs out just in time to see his dad getting taken away. He's about to give chase. He gets lasered again, and he gets knocked out. And all the other kids are like, oh, God, Mom, what happened to Dad? And Luke's like, oh, they took him, call 911. I got to go. I got to take care of this. And his family's like, what do you mean you got to? Dude, you can't do anything. You're injured. You're bleeding. What are you going to do about it? And he's like, you're right. I guess I'll stay and get medical attention. Meanwhile, in his head, he's just, damn it. I'm going to start wearing my armor all the time. I don't know how Nightwing does it, but I'm going to do it too. So at that point, we cut over to the Congo 3 days earlier. And if you remember, Bruce Wayne said he was going to buy the diamond mine in order to cripple the Marabunta's, income or whatever. And so he's here basically just checking up on it, saying yes, because it was illegal, I got it for a good price. And I hope that the government knows I will be very closely monitoring this. And then this random ass dude comes up named Atticus Fontaine, who is wearing an actual honest to God, royalty cape. And he's like, hi, I represent Seclorum, the parent company of the Imperial Diamond Exchange. And Bruce is like, yeah, no, you guys did some illegal stuff. And he's like, oh, no, we have a big enough company that we are pleading negligence. We didn't know that they were doing illegal stuff. There's just too much going on. And Bruce is like, okay, yeah, sure. What are you doing here? He's like, oh, well, we would like to buy that diamond mine back. And Bruce is like, no, I'm not going to do that. And he's like, all right, well, check the number on the back of my business card and you'll see how serious we are. And he's like, still no, not going to do that. And so Atticus yells out well, you'd be wise to reconsider. We are a dangerous enemy to have. And Bruce is like, oh, I'm sorry, you threatened me? And he's like, no. Yes. So, meanwhile, cut to modern day, and Luke is called up Batman saying, I gotta go. I'm stuck here with my family right now. I gotta go become Batwing so I can track down my dad. And Batman's like, dude, I'm gonna take care of your dad. He's important to me too. Just be with your family. You're going through a time of crisis right now, okay? And Batwing yells no, I don't want to do that. And Batman just hangs up on him. So at this point, he hops onto his father's computer and he logics out okay, my dad's rich, but because of the whole diamond mine sale thing, I'm thinking this has more to do with his position at Wayne Tech. So I'm going to go ahead and just go on his computer. And he finds a special little password entry thing, and he guesses his father's password, and inside are all the different blueprints for all the different bat things. They even have a special folder of the bat logo as their symbol. And he's like, oh dear lord, if the Marabunta get my dad's passwords, they'll have all of Batman's tech. I must stop this. So he goes out in his Batwing outfit and he calls up Batman again and says hey, I'm already outside, I'm in the outfit, can you just let me partner up with you and be along with this, because I also know my dad designs all the Batman stuff. It's all right, yep, fair enough. He's at the harbor. And so there's this strange sequence where Batwing, he glides into a random woman's convertible and says hey, I'm not Batman, I'm Batwing. Could you drive me to the thing so I could stop a crime? And the woman's like, hell yeah, I'd love to be a part of this. And the Batman looks over the edge of the bridge and sees the Bat boat with Batman inside of it. And he's like, oh, never mind. I'm going to hitch a ride with him. And so he just jumps off and we never see her again. It's such a weird sequence. So at this point, they make their way to a cargo container, which apparently is not an actual cargo container. It's all a massive fortress that just looks like a cargo container. And he activates, not joking here, actually called detective vision, where they can see all the heat signatures of everyone inside. And they're like, okay, you should use your invisibility, Luke, and I'll go in and be my normal stealthy self. So they bust in there and they see that there's some guards and stuff like that. But what we see is that Lucius has a weird mind reading device on him that makes him look bug-like. And then it's oh, what are you doing? And they're oh, we're just reading your minds for all your secrets and passwords and stuff. And then we see this other dude who has just the same shape of head, a big cone head, but it's real. It's not a piece of clothing. He's just deformed like that, and he's extra gross. But regardless, Batman and Luke are doing recon up on top of a balcony. They're 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, yeah, we could take this on. And then we get this female guard, the same one from 2 issues ago. And he's like, hey, we knew you're there since you busted in. We know you're there. We're going to fight you now. And it's like, all right, fair enough. So they come in. They all start fighting. The Marabuntas start retreating until we get the female guards just like, psh, you think we're retreating? Nah, we're just saving our own skin because we're bringing in our super soldier ant. And this giant-ass ant mech comes in and basically Batwing says, uh-oh, this looks bad. Is this bad, Batman? And that's the issue. It's so weird to me. We've ended now 3 issues with like some animal themed whatever coming in and Luke basically going like, uh-oh, I wonder how this is going to end. It just, I don't know. It seems a bit weird to me. You do 3 in a row on your first 3 issues of your run. Either way, it's fine. It's an okay book. I think my biggest issue with it is that I didn't think the Marabunta would be sticking around. I think I assumed that they were like a 1-issue sort of get your feeding sort of villain. So we could just show Batwing like, okay, here's how he deals with like a bunch of Z-level nobodies. But then they turn out to be the actual main threat here. And they keep on going with this ant theming, which does not seem menacing. Like, they even specifically say in this that the guys inside the suits are just like meat puppets, and the suits are being controlled by a hive mind, like a queen somewhere farther away. So they're not even threatening on their own. It's just like, why not just use robots at that point? I don't know. It's just a weird first arc villain. Add on to that lion guy, who I think is still around, and he just wasn't in this issue at all. There's a lot going on. So yeah, I'm going to say, I'll say 6.5. It's fine. It's not great. It's not fantastic. It's just the next chapter of this Batwing book with a couple of weird choices, lowering it down to 6.5. Action Comics number 22, written by Scott Lobdell, art by Tyler Kirkham. So last issue, there was a lot, but the primary focus is that Hector Hammond is now maybe in control of Hive, I guess. It's barely even a focus here. So we open up in space. Hector Hammond is in a spacesuit looking at this massive ship made by Hive somewhere in Earth's orbit that's able to like cut a planet in half. And he's like, this is beautiful. I'm going to use this to rule the world. And then all of a sudden a teleportation thing happens. And he's like, this better not be the Justice League or I'm going to be pissed. And this dude steps through named Maximus Cranius, and he is the first knight of the Pax Galactica. And so all of the Hive agents are like, Dr. Hammond, get back. We'll take care of this guy. And Hector Hammond just uses his telepathy stuff to appear in front of him as a hologram, being like, hey, moron, get out of here. Don't you know this is Hive area? And Maximus is like, okay, well, I know what I'm doing here, and I'm not a moron, so don't call me that. And the whole reason I'm here is because that ship is able to destroy planets. And it's like, oh, what? You want to use it? You think you're able to do it, moron? And he's like, no. And so he comes in with his big old battle axe looking thing and just cuts the ship in half. Just straight up destroys it in the name of peace in the galaxy. And Hector's like, come on, I just got that toy. Come on. And at that point, he's like, all right, well, I don't care. Bye. And so Hector tells his guys to get him out of there for his own safety. And then we cut down to Earth, where Clark is with Cat Grant on the red carpet for a movie premiere. Because remember, they're running a website together called ClarkCatropolis.com. Still the worst website name ever made. And basically, he's like, oh yeah, we spent all of our money to get here on the red carpet, but Kat's going to use this to get exclusive interviews and whatnot, and she's going to be able to pump up the website's profile because this is the last film for some award-winning actor that no one's ever heard of, and also features the debut of a pop star in her film career. And she locks eyes with this pop star across the room, and she walks over and is just like, hey, remember me? I'm Cat Grant. And the pop star is like, totally, your review of me is what put me on the map, Kat. I would like, what can I do for you? And Kat says, can you give me an interview? And she says, no. Turns out she's held to exclusives by the Daily Planet, and she's being rushed away to do that. And then all of a sudden, everybody's Q-pads start melting. And turns out that Clark melted them so that she would have more one-on-one time to talk to this pop star. Then all of a sudden, Clark smells something. The smell of a rare earth metal called infinitium. There's no pronunciation guide. And as he's smelling this actor who's about to retire steps out. And he's like, hey, everybody, thanks for coming to the party. You know, this is going to be the last one for me, so everybody drink up. And he's like, why does this guy smell like this metal that there should only be itty-bitty amounts of, and I have all of it in my fortress? And he x-rays the guy and sees that his entire skeleton has been replaced with robotic parts made of infinitium. And Clark is like, okay, that's really, really weird. But, like, he's not tearing up buildings or anything, and he's not, like, being a villain, so as suspicious as it is, I guess I should just leave him alone. And as he thinks that, all of a sudden, Hector Hammond seemingly just broadcasts to all of Metropolis saying, Superman, this is Hector Hammond. I need you. Please come into space. Signed, Hector Hammond. And Clark, like, looks around and he's like, that was weird, wasn't it? And everyone else like, what was weird? What are you talking about? He's like, never mind. And you'd think that means that he didn't broadcast to all of Metropolis. He just specifically broadcasted it into Clark's mind. But the very next page says that Clark knows that Hector Hammond doesn't know who he is because he was broadcasting it out on, like, a wide band. Like, many people could hear him. But that's not what we saw on the goddamn page. I have words on this, but regardless, speeding forward, he goes into space, he sees the hologram of Hector Hammond, and Hector's like, hey, someone blew up my ship. And he's like, yeah, that ship looks like it could destroy the Earth. I should be thanking the guy who destroyed it. And he's like, fine, whatever, but this guy has a massive amount of power, and he could easily use it to destroy the Earth if he wanted. Shouldn't you at least check on him and make sure that he's not evil? And Superman's like, I'm not your lapdog, but fine. I guess I'll do it. So he goes down to the moon where Cranius is sitting, and he's like, hey, buddy, you lost? You want to check in on Earth? What's going on? And Cranius just doesn't want to hear him talk anymore, so he just elbows him in the face, which knocks him way off the moon. And Superman's like, you know what, I've been pretty good about restraining myself lately, so I'm just going to go beat the crap out of this guy. So he comes in and just starts beating up Cranius, and it's just like, what are you doing here, and how long until you leave? And Cranius basically is like, all right, look, I get it. You may be super strong, but I got my battle axe. And he hits Superman with it, and it knocks him off. And he's like, I am a knight of the Pax Galactica, and I am here to keep the peace of the entire galaxy. And Superman's like, okay, well, I've never heard of you, and you're super, like, scary and strong, so I'm going to need to see some identification. And Cranius is like, I don't answer. You're not a space cop. What are you doing here? This is like the FBI to, like, a sheriff. And as he is about to kill Superman, quote unquote, another being steps in, saying, you will do no such thing. We have no time for this nonsense. There is a greater threat than you could possibly imagine. By the way, we're the other knights of the Pax Galactica. And we just see 3 of them there. So I'm sure we'll continue on with that. But I really want to go back to that moment where Hector Hammond telepathies into Superman's head, because, like, last issue I had a lot of problems with the way that it was structured, and that it felt like there was a disconnect between what was being shown and what was being said, and they have doubled down on that. And I think there were some major issues here between the writing and the plot and then the word balloons, because nothing is matching up here, and it's kind of driving me a little bit crazy. So yeah, this is not great. This is an interesting enough plot. It's part 1 to what they call of Atomic Knights is the name of the arc, but, like, it's poor just structure. It's poor just writing. I'm looking at the pictures and the words are telling me something different from what I'm seeing. It's not good comic craft, because that is the one thing that needs to match up, is that what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing are the same. So I gotta hit hard for that one. And the last one I was able to at least, like, oh, you know, the speech bubble, like, wrote in an excuse for it, despite the fact it seemed like it was written for something else. This one just contradicts it straight up. So everything else, who cares? That's the thing that I'm really sitting on here. Also, Clark Kitropolis is the worst website name of all time. That's a -1 point as well. Leaving this with probably a 4.5. Like, it feels harsh. I have given much worse comics much higher scores, but like, this is now a pattern. And if we're going to continue to be this bad, I'm going to enjoy it less and less each time. Green Lantern number 22, written by Robert Venditti, art by Billy Tan. So, last issue, Larfleeze attacked, and a bunch of Green Lantern newbies showed up, and they are just completely useless. And this issue picks up in that exact same spot. Larfleeze is sending all of his Corps after Hal and the Green Lantern Corps. And so Hal makes a little shark cage around the newbies and just like, hey guys, if you want to get in here at any point, just use your imagination and make some stuff that can attack these guys. And he makes a shark and says, like, that's all it takes. And so they're like, we don't really know what's going on. What, can we go home? What's happening? And Hal's like, you can't go home. Okay. My name is Hal Jordan. I'm running the Green Lantern Corps. You guys are able to fight or face down Great Fear because that's why you're picked for the ring. So go ahead and face down Great Fear and make some goddamn constructs. And one of them just like uses his imagination to make a fist out of his ring, and it just knocks Hal in the back of the head. And he's like, great job, kid. Just do that over in that general direction. So they come in and they start attacking. We see all the people who were down in the science cells have joined into the fight. They're doing their best. One of them's just like, Jesus Christ, these are our rookies. These are the people who are going to be the future of the Corps. And Hal's like, I know, just we need backup. We need reinforcements. What can we possibly do? And at that point, Saint Walker and a random-ass Star Sapphire show up. And he's just like, don't worry, all will be well. Larfleeze sees them and be like, oh my god, more treasures. I love it. Go ahead, attack them as well. So Saint Walker powers up the Green Lantern Corps using his Blue Lantern ability. Everyone's supercharged, and they all start fighting back against the Orange Lanterns. But as soon as they really start fighting back, Larfleeze's lantern goes out. It just completely goes nil. And Hal's like, did we do it? Is that it? And then I think Kilowog's there is just like, no, this isn't that, because all of our rings are dead as well. Like, we're not able to do anything either. And so Larfleeze is like, so I guess I'm being put in jail now, aren't I? And Hal's like, yeah. Because, I mean, I think we could overpower you even without the rings. So they're about to, like, basically tackle him down to the ground. And at that point, all of their rings, as they're all looking at him, just immediately start blasting off light again. They're just like, oh, okay, back online, cool. So the Orange Lanterns come to. They attack the Star Sapphire. No one else is able to get to her in time, and she is killed. And so the Star Sapphire ring pops off her finger and starts looking for a new replacement. Meanwhile, down in the science cells, the one dude who decided to stay behind and talk to Noel Ange, who will be a recurring character, he's just like, look, I want to be with you, but you're a prisoner and I am your warden. It could never work. And then the Star Sapphire ring comes in and like says, Noel Ange, you are able to feel great love. Become a Star Sapphire. And the warden guy's like, oh my god, this must mean you actually truly love me and you won't do anything evil. I'll totally let you out of your cell. So he presses the button. She gets the ring onto her finger and becomes a Star Sapphire. And he's just like, wow, you're so amazing. Queen of your clan and a Star Sapphire. And she's like, yep. Slice. Kills the warden. And he's just like, but you got the love thing. That means you love me. And she's like, no. I love my clan. I love, like, the clan that took me in and made me their queen. I feel nothing for you. Bye-bye. So he's dead. Up on top, we see all of the rookies are, like, starting to get their bearings. Some of them are coming up with different things that they can do. And he comments how one of them is like, oh yeah, you're doing a good job. You made like spears and stuff. And she throws out like, yes, it took a while, but I figured out that it's like a mathematical equation that has infinite solutions. And Hal's like, nerd alert. Anyway, so at that point, he tells Kilowog, look, Larfleeze is just going to keep on coming. We got to get him away. We got to like really take him out. So I need you to go back to your desk and I need you to listen to my orders. And Kilowog's like, I ain't doing no desk duty, boss. You can have my badge and gun right now. And Hal just says, dude, just go get to the desk. So he sits down and he says, all right, launch all the ships. All the ships we have in our hangar, just launch them off in all different directions. And we see Noel Ange is there. She sees all the ships taking off, seemingly jumps onto one. And as soon as all the ships start taking off, Hal calls in and it's like, hey, Kilowog, did you send off all of that treasure like I asked you to? And Kilowog's like, what are you... Oh, wait, I got it. Yeah, okay. Yeah, boss, all the treasure is on one of these ships. And Larfleeze overhears it and just be like, oh, treasure? Okay, half of my corps, go chase down those ships. The other half, continue fighting. And at that point, they get confused enough about which ones are going where that Hal and the rest of the crew are able to take out the Orange Lanterns, and Larfleeze has to run away and regroup. So that's that. And the Green Lanterns look on, and they're like, huh, all right, well, that went better than expected, and we didn't really suffer any losses. And Hal's like, we lost a Star Sapphire. And they're like, oh, is that bad? I meant more we didn't lose any Green Lanterns, sorry. And Kilowog's like, yeah, you might want to go talk to Carol because seeing a Star Sapphire die, I'm sure that got to you. And Hal's like, no, we're taking a break. I'm just going to focus on the core right now. And we see that one of the people goes back into the cells and they like, oh, hey guys, you know how we said no Green Lanterns died? This one did, and he was the one who actually stayed behind in the cells, which means that we had a prisoner escape. And at that point, we see Noel Ange on a ship saying, all right, plot a course for Sector 0563, the Outer Territory. So whatever's going on out there, I'm sure we'll get an answer to next issue. Additionally, there was one little bit in here where one of the recruits is like, hey, we said that we were going to be training. Are we going to start training now? And Hal's like, nah. We have a funeral first. So, yeah, I might get that as well. It's an okay second issue. Here's the thing. Because of Green Lantern, I think New Guardians, we know why the lights are going in and out. We know why it's just dying every once in a while. We're going to have that crossover much sooner than you think. But for this particular one, it was a good little first outing. It's just saying like, yeah, Larfleeze comes in, we get some new recruits, we got to show them the ropes, and then we just send Larfleeze away with the stupidest trick I've ever seen in my life. But it works. It's just a nice little fun first outing where we're going to get our bearings and say, all right, the real threat's going to be this Noel Ange woman, and we'll see what she's able to do with the Star Sapphire power. So it's intriguing at the very least. It's got me interested for the next issue. This kind of just feels like a little mini introduction arc, and the real meat of it's going to start up next time. So overall, I'll give it a flat 7. It's fine. It's unoffensive. It's not anything fantastic, but it's good. So not much more to say about that one. Earth 2, number 14, written by James Robinson, art by Nicola Scott. So, last issue kind of felt like a weird little interstitial, but the primary thing that is to be focused on is the fact that they know the world as a whole knows that Steppenwolf is in this country of Durain, and everyone's about to attack. It's just prepping for war. So, we pick up with a whole bunch of mech-looking, chicken leg robots outside of Durain. And the people inside are like, yeah, still nothing to report. Guess we are feeling pretty safe. I'm sure these people will wait years to attack to make sure that they're actually going to be able to do something. And then all of a sudden, Green Lantern, Dr. Fate, and Flash run in. They're just like, all right, everybody, just fire. So immediately they start unloading on everybody. And we get some narration of them saying the stuff they were saying back at Alan Scott's apartment. And what it boils down to is, okay, here's the thing. I own a media network that is Global Broadcasting Corporation. It can spin anything, but it could spin things a lot easier if we did something super awesome and cool. And Flash says, you want to go in along with the World Army and fight against Steppenwolf. And Green Lantern says, close but wrong. I want to go in before for them and just clear the way for them. Like, we ease up their defenses, the World Army's going to be thanking us for ages, and I could spin that like crazy. And they're like, yeah, no, that's a great idea. Let's do that. I mean, we might even be able to make it all the way to Steppenwolf. We're wonders after all. And Dr. Fate steps in being like, yeah. And I'm sure there's only going to be like minimal fate, like deadly consequences. And Green Lantern looks and is like, Dr. Fate, that's a strangely odd sentiment to say. Do you want to maybe chime in with like something you've seen in the future, maybe a little bit? And Dr. Fate says, this is a moment of like crisis. It's a very big, bold moment. Anything is possible. I don't know what's going to happen. So let's go in there and do our best. And they say, yep, for sure. And Green Lantern says, and here's to teamwork. I just want to specifically note that because it's a stupid line. So we see deep inside Durain, Steppenwolf is being notified that, oh, hey, by the way, the World Army hasn't arrived yet, but we're being attacked by Wonders. And Steppenwolf's like, oh, well, yeah, of course they're going to try to attack me with Wonders again. Send in the hounds. And we see 3 shadowy figures all awaiting their release. So, cutting back to the fight, Green Lantern, Flash, and Dr. Fate have beaten up all the soldiers there and left them for dead. And Flash is like, I mean, I think this went pretty well. I think this is pretty good, guys, yeah? And Green Lantern's like, you think this went well? Look, this is war, Flash. That was just the first wave. We are nowhere near done. And on that cue, a whole bunch of soldiers with jetpacks and soldiers riding mechanized wild warthogs, and I mean like actual animal warthogs, come riding in. But before they can do anything, they were immediately blasted by a giant laser and shot by a bunch of arrows and crushed by a huge fist. And our little gang is like, oh, we're not alone anymore, guys. And we see that Wesley Dodds and his Sandman, the Atom, and a new Archer character have all shown up. And Snipes is like, what are you doing? Or sorry, I say Dodds. Wesley Snipes is not a character in this book. Dodds says, like, what are you guys doing here? Do you have any idea how much you've ruined everything that we've been trying to do? So then we cut back to the World Army, and we see that they're flying in just a massive formation, and Commander Khan is talking to one of the generals named Foster, and they're just back and forth and saying like, yes, Commander Khan, you said that you wanted to take your time and not rush into this battle, but everybody else outvoted you. How are you feeling about joining in on this fight anyway? He's like, it's part of my duty. I'm happy to join in and whatnot. And they're like, well, a lot of this stuff comes down to Sloan, Terry Sloan, and we know you're not exactly a big fan of his. You sure you're good with this? And we see Commander Khan say, yeah, no. Like, it sucks that we're having to go along with Sloan's thing, but not, like, Terry Sloan's not the only genius that we have. And he turns around and we see Mr. Terrific, like, Earth Zero's Mr. Terrific is here. So, yeah, they're all flying in to meet that. Anyway, cut back to the battlefield, and Dodds is basically like, okay, look, I get it. We, as the government, have not treated you very well, and you want to prove yourself, but, like, you are actually causing tons of problems here. And Flash is like, the big guy, like, torched my entire lawn. And he's like, shut up, I don't even care about you. Then we flash over to the new guy, the Arrow guy, and they're like, okay, who the hell is this guy? He's like, codename's Red Arrow. And it's like, okay, well, I'm the Flash, and I can run faster than you could ever possibly shoot your arrow, so sit your ass down. And Green Lantern senses the tensions are rising. He's like, all right, guys, hold on. You're right. We wanted to make an impression. If we're messing stuff up, we don't want that to happen. So how about we stick around, and as long as you don't try to arrest us or anything, we'll follow your lead. I'm sure you could use more power. And Dodds is like, all right, yeah, I'm good with that. But then all of a sudden, one of his Sandmen just explode via some heat vision, and we see that the hounds that Steppenwolf called in earlier have arrived, and they're just flying over top of them, saying like, oh, you're walking into the gates of hell, and we're here to escort you. So, yep, that's happening. It's a fine enough. Like, it feels like just sort of a pacer issue, and last issue was just an interstitial more than anything else. This one just feels like we're beginning the war. We're starting off on this big thing. There's no reason we have to jump in with both feet. We're just going to take it slow. World Army's not even here yet, and we're just going to show how do these different parts line up. I'm intrigued. I think that that's a good intro to an arc. That being said, it is very slow, to the point where the fight scenes in this issue are actually all around pretty boring because there is no intensity to them. There doesn't feel like there's any sort of issue with it. It's everyone just talking at each other. With that being said, I like them talking with Sandmen and all that. That's interesting. I'm super down on that. On the flip side, Commander Khan just talking at screens to his generals repeatedly over the 14 issues of this book is getting real damn boring. They need to do something more interesting with his character. I don't care what, but something has to change. Maybe Miss Terrific showing up is going to be it. I don't know. I'm up for it. Michael Holt's a good addition here to the cast. I want to see what he does, but doesn't fix Commander Khan's immediate problem of stop talking to screens. So overall, fine issue. I'll give it a... I'll give it a 6.5. But it's real close to that 7. It's like right on the edge. I just don't feel right giving it the 7 for what it is in terms of structurally as an issue. So 6.5. Tune in for the continuation of this, I'm sure, many issue lasting war. Green Arrow number 22, written by Jeff Lemire, art by Andrea Sorrentino. So last issue was the big reveal of like everything, and it's hard to recap all that, but the biggest thing is that in order to hunt down Komodo, Oliver has to find 2 other quote-unquote dragons, and the first one is in this tiny country of Vlatava. So we pick up with mysterious hooded figure walking towards this military base in Vlatava. It's immediately apparent that it's Oliver, and when he refuses to identify himself, he goes full Green Arrow and starts attacking all of these mercenaries who are here to guard the base. And we see him calling up his team of Henry and I want to say it's Naomi, but I'm like 50% sure on that. So regardless, he's pulling out all these trick arrows that they've built for him. One of them is actual green flames. Another one is a bunch of like net arrows and stuff like that. But regardless, he makes his way deeper into the compound, taking up people as he goes, until finally he's beaten up everybody and he's kind of left alone there. And yes, it is Naomi. So he calls up Naomi and it's like, okay, do you guys have like a map for me? Do you know where I'm supposed to go? And she's like, no, this place is unmappable, but we've made ourselves a map drawing arrow. So just plant it in a wall and we'll use vibrational technology to give you a full readout. So they do that. And this entire time he's praising Naomi's arrows and doesn't say anything about Henry's. And when it comes down to it later, he's like, oh, yeah, you know, if it gets dark there, Oliver, you can light up a flare arrow. He's like, yeah, flare arrow. Super neat, Henry. Not as cool as Naomi's arrow, though. So he makes his way deeper and down into the castle of this place. And we see that there is a woman chained up with a dragon tattoo. And as he pulls the bag off of her head, she's like, oh, you came. I knew you'd come for me. And she gives a big old kiss to Oliver. Cut to 2 days earlier in Hungary. They are basically just walking through the plan. And what they say is, okay, this itty-bitty little country of Vlatava is ruled by this monarch named Zytle, Z-Y-T-L-E. And he seemingly is really good to the people, but he's into some bad militaristic stuff for everyone else. And so he's doing bad stuff. And so they say, all right, how do we want to handle this? And they give kind of a short little backstory on who Zytle is and how he had a family castle and he lost everything. It fell into ruin, and then he showed back up with a criminal empire to reclaim his birthright and the country for himself. And Henry points out, like, he's like an anti-Oliver Queen. Crazy. So at that point, Oliver's like, well, no better way to do it than a direct approach. So cue everything we just saw there, cut back to the present, and the woman who gets unmasked says, Robert? And he's like, no, that's my dad. I mean, I'm not Robert. Who are you talking about? I'm Green Arrow. And he cuts her free, and she's like, you're Robert's boy, aren't you? You're Oliver." And Green Arrow's like, "I don't know who this Oliver is, lady." And she's like, "Yeah, okay, look, you look just like your dad. Like, you look like just like my Robert." And he's like, "What do you mean your Robert? What's going on here?" So at that point, they start feeling something. There's some crazy interference going on with their comms, and all of a sudden, in walks the leader of the place, Zeitel, aka Count Vertigo. And he uses his abilities to knock this woman and Green Arrow down on their asses. So then we cut back to Seattle briefly, where 3 heads of rival gangs are meeting up. And they're saying, "Okay, here's the deal. I've called you all here because I want to propose a truce, because somebody is killing all of our dudes. And we can't run Seattle from the shadows if somebody is killing all of our dudes." And they're like, yeah, you may got a point. Maybe we should have a truce, but screw you. I'm never going to work with you. And then some of his guys pull guns, and then this other guy has an all-female crew, and they all pull their guns, and it's like, okay, yeah, everybody put it away. All right, it's worth talking. Maybe let's see if we can do anything. But then one of them storms out saying, like, "No, I do just fine on my own. Let the police," or, "You know what, how about Green Arrow? It is his job after all. He can take care of whoever's killing people." And the guy who called the meeting is just like, "All right, but don't expect me to bail you out when it goes south for you." So anyway, back to Vlatava. Count Vertigo steps up and is just like, "Oh, you've come here to take Shadow? Well, you can't have her, American." And Green Arrow, like, reaches for his bow. He's unable to focus enough to aim it. And Vertigo's like, "Oh my God. All these superheroes running around, and you manage to be the only one that needs to aim something against me? That's hilarious. What are the odds of that? Seriously." And so he calls over to Henry, and Henry's like, "Okay, how about you take your quiver and throw it at him?" And Vertigo's basically blowing Oliver's mind at this point wide open. He's freaking out. And he's like, "What do you mean throw my quiver?" He's like, "Just do it. It'll work." And so he throws his quiver at Vertigo. And as it's in the middle of them, apparently Henry loaded it up with a electromagnetic pulse that's going to shut down whatever Vertigo's doing to cause this effect. And it works. It shuts off all the things, sends Vertigo into like a mild migraine, I guess. He just collapses down. And so Shadow and Oliver make their way out, and immediately Oliver's asking, like, "Okay, first and foremost, how do you know Robert Queen?" And just like, "Oh yeah, sorry, my name's Shadow, and I have my own questions, like, how did you know I was still alive?" And he's like, "Yeah, no, he's a magus. He said find the dragons. I'm hunting down Komodo. Also, Komodo had a daughter that dresses exactly the same way that you dress. Who is she? And why is she dressed like you?" And she's like, "Oh, he had a daughter. Was she okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, she was fine. She almost killed me." And it's like, "Oh, well, that's not Komodo's daughter. That's my daughter. Her name is Emiko, and she's also the daughter of Robert Queen. She's your sister." End of issue. Okay, so here's the thing. Like, knowing DC Comics after this and knowing general DC lore, I knew this already as a thing. I didn't expect it to be revealed this early, and I also didn't expect it to be like Shadow and all that already. Like, we're moving very quickly here, and I'm down with it. I think this is a fantastic way to wrap up the issue, because anybody who didn't know this stuff going in, like, damn, yeah, that's a hell of a shock. That, like, this whole secret backstory to Robert Queen, and he had a secret daughter, and like this is the mother, and it's a whole big thing. I'm down for it. I'm so interested in this. The only real critique I have here is that this is Count Vertigo's debut issue in terms of the New 52, and he just feels like a completely worthless dick. Like, it was nothing to take him out. I'm sure that he will come back and or will be more of a threat later on, but like here it kind of just feels a little wasted. The fact of, oh no, this count of this castle is just a dude who can make you feel uneasy, and they make him off to be menacing to start with, but they take him out so quickly it just doesn't work anymore. So anyway, I can praise this until the cows come home, but in the end I'm still going to give it an 8. And the only reason it's not getting an 8.5, which I do think it would have deserved, is because of the seemingly mishandling of Count Vertigo. I I think he deserved a little bit better of a spotlight when they were finally going to get around to him. So half point for that, but still very solid 8. Stormwatch number 22, written by Jim Starlin, art by Yvel Guichet. So last issue, Jenny Soul led Lobo into the place where the collective said to go, and it turned out to be a trap, and Lobo's going to like kill everybody. So they're kind of just recapping that for a page, saying, all right, here's all the crazy stuff that happened. What do we got to do in order to stop this? And they said, well, he needed to go to this exact location. So it stands to reason if we get him out of this exact location, everything will be fine. So Jenny runs in and it's just like, I can use my telekinetic ability to move him. And she starts to use her power and then immediately gets like mind blasted away by Lobo's intense, like Super Saiyan ability coming off him. And Weird grabs Jenny and just be like, all right, well, she's out. Who wants to step up next? And turns out that the rest of Stormwatch are all like surrounding him, trying to get in on him. And the collective is changing the way that Lobo perceives them so that he'll fight back against them. So they all look like giant bugs for some reason. He throws his energy out. It starts like destroying the city as a whole. And the rest of Stormwatch is like, oh, is this plan to destroy the city? Like the planet? Is it what's the goal here? And they're like, I don't know. Let's just get in there and take him out. So Midnighter starts to move in, and immediately the other two are like, well, now hold on. Midnighter, you literally can't do anything here. This is above your pay grade. Get out of here. Go take care of Jenny. He's like, no, grumble, fine. So Apollo then steps in. He tries to move Lobo. We see that Lobo throws some punches as Apollo comes in, thinking that he is a bug. And he knocks Apollo straight across the city into a building. Midnighter goes and takes care of Apollo, saying like, nah, he's out for the count too. It's all up to you, whatever the hell his name is. War something, I think. I don't know. The green energy guy. They didn't do a good enough job of reminding me of names this issue. Regardless, he tries firing off energy blasts, doesn't do anything. And it's like, okay, I think it's time to call this one. We have failed. We need to get off this planet just in case it's a world-destroying thing. So they start preparing for extraction, and then all of a sudden the collective is like, okay, he's powered up enough. Let's do our thing. So they redirect his energy into a broadcasting station building like place, and the head of Stormwatch says like, forecaster, what's going on? What's with the energy inside of the TV station? And it's like, I don't know, they're just sending out a message. And it's like, okay, well, keep an eye on that. And all of a sudden, Lobo, he runs out of energy. He collapses, unconscious. And the crew comes up and is like, is it? Did we win? Are we done? Was all you doing trying to send out a message? And Forecaster scans the area. And it turns out that the message was not a message. It was some sort of like signal or something like that. And the entire purpose of it was that it found the homeworlds of those two warring alien races, the Bruticus and the Caymanites, and murdered them all. All of their entire homeworld just dead. Like nobody left alive at all. And so two entire races, extinct, just like that. And everyone's looking around like, oh dear God, what did we just let happen? Genocide of two whole alien species. That's horrible. Jenny Soul takes it especially hard, but everyone just loads into the portal and just like, all right, well, we'll deal with him when we get home. By the way, we're taking Lobo. He's an asset. We can use him. Someone pick him up, drag him in. So at that point, the collective steps in and they're like, all right, we did a good job, everybody. Congratulations. We just need to wrap up a few little loose ends there and then we're good. So they head into the Stormwatch like HQ, and the leader is talking to one of the Shadow Lords, and they're just like, all right, so we have any idea what that was about? And they're like, no, that's weird. Like, why would they kill the Caymanites? And they're like, they have no special place in the universe. They aren't anything major. What's so big a deal about them? And so they say the mission was a failure, but they got some good intel on the collective, and maybe it'll help them in their next mission against them, whatever it is. Plus, they got Lobo. And so Lobo starts to come to. He's like, oh, what's going on here? And the leader comes down and just like, hey, you now work for Stormwatch. Congratulations. And he's like, maybe you don't know me. I'm not much of a joiner. And he's like, maybe you don't know Stormwatch. We put nanobots in your blood that will kill you if you disobey. And so they give him an electric shock and says, all right, your first day's tomorrow. Have fun. So we then see I mean, it's pretty much a useless page, but it's just Stormwatch and Apollo, not Stormwatch, Midnighter and Apollo talking, saying like, oh man, this place, I didn't sign up for interplanetary genocide. Maybe we should just leave and run away together. And then they say like, oh, but the aliens who gave us our powers are still out there. We need to stay with Stormwatch because, yeah. So then we go to the engineer, who I genuinely forgot was in this book. And she goes and talks to Zhao, who is the guy that she picked up in like the first issue of this run. And turns out that he cannot function without some sort of drug in his system. And they've detoxed him from all the hard things. So now they just let him smoke a little weed for every once in a while. And she walks him around the ship and says like, yeah, no, like once you gain some trust here, once you join the team, you'll be able to do whatever you want here. How does that sound? We're the good guys. And then Zhao sees someone on this ship, and he recognizes the person as someone who was like a soldier and shot at him or something like that. Not explained, but it happened. So in case it is. Then we go over to Jenny and the Weird, and the Weird's like, you shouldn't be upset. Like, you didn't know what the collective was doing. Like, yes, you're kind of responsible for those 2 genocides, but it's more on them. And she's like, yeah, no, I know, but like their game isn't over yet. And then all of a sudden the collective appear inside of her bedroom. And it's like, all right, Weird, get behind me this time. And she's like, all right, collective, you're here to kill me because I'm a loose end. Like, I know that you exist, and I know like what you look like and what you feel like, and so you have to get rid of me. And they're like, yep, that's the long and short of it. And she's like, all right, well, why don't you explain to me exactly why I had to do what I did? And it's like, well, Lobo's the only one who has this weirdly intense energy inside of him, so we just needed to get there to exploit it, and the entire purpose was to kill those warring alien races, because if either of them won the war against the other, they would have taken over and killed like numerous galaxies. Billions and billions of people would be dead. We just killed like a couple 100 million, and we think that's better. It's, you know, it's the right thing to do. And Jenny's like, well, you lied to me, and therefore it is you will not be able to do that stuff again, because I am the alpha dog when it comes to psychic powers. And the collective's like, yeah, okay, you're a little girl, and we're going to just disintegrate you into dust now. And so they use their psychic abilities, but turns out Jenny wasn't bluffing. She is genuinely the best psychic there is. So she uses her psychic abilities to crush the skulls of the collective and turn them into dust. And Weird's like, Jesus Christ, man, I didn't know you could do that. And he's like, yeah, it was them or us. I did what was necessary. But, you know, they're not done yet. They're beings that exist outside of time and space. I'm sure we'll get another attack from them soon enough. We just have to figure out what they want. And we see that the leader is looking on at this saying like, yep, and we all have to deal with our own part in the tragedy of what happened this day, Jenny Soul. As Jenny like sheds a single tear. Gonna point out, one page in this issue, just weird. She doesn't have a pupil in one of her eyes. And it's like, not even that it's just hidden by her hair or anything, it's just not there. And it's so unsettling when I first came across it. And it's not supposed to be that way. It's just an art error. Anyway, I'm glad that the collective is sticking around, because this feels way too easy to take them out. I think that it's an okay if we're doing this as just sort of like the, you know, first encounter sort of thing, and we're going to come back to them again in a stronger form. But if this were the end-all be-all for the collective, these reality-shaping, time-traveling, mind-controlling villains, I'd feel very let down. This feels like the sucker's way out for them. As for adding Lobo to the team, whatever. Like this, I have... After 20 issues of Stormwatch being a very specific team, and then we just randomly shake it up, I don't have that many attachments to this version. So whoever you want to add, whoever, just do it. I don't care. Overall, this is probably I'm going to go with a flat 6. And the reason why isn't because it's a poor story. It's because of the back half, where we get the random page of Midnight and Apollo saying like, we have to stay with Stormwatch no matter what. And then Engineer saying, let this man smoke some weed. And then just this like random couple things of they sending out signals to kill like I feel like an alien race as strong and collective should just be able to kill them without Lobo. Like, it should just be a thing of, like, we poisoned their water supply and they're dead. Like, shouldn't be that hard. But hey, whatever. It's just a weird story, and it's only going to get weirder. So, 6 for this. The Movement number 3, written by Gail Simone, art by Freddie Williams II. So last issue, we had the entire gang, sans Catharsis, going after a weather witch named Rainmaker, who apparently watches over a small part of the town. And Catharsis goes and fights against a man named James Cannon, who's like the richest dude ever. And he's here to just buy this city and run it like a business. So Catharsis is fighting against the security guards still, just completely wiping the floor with them. She cracking skulls, taking names, doing what she can, but eventually they do get the upper hand on her. And they take her down and start beating her, and like they cuff her and whatnot. And James Cannon steps up and just like, all right, look, Catharsis, whatever your name is, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to take you, and I'm going to beat you, and I'm going to break you down. And when you are begging for me to stop doing what I'm doing, I'm going to kill all your friends, and I'm going to bury them in the same grave that I'm going to bury you in. Cool? Great? How does that sound? So then we cut over to the rest of the gang, and they're fighting against Rainmaker, and they are just completely outclassed. They have no ability to do anything. Mouse loses one of his mice named Rascal, and he apparently taught it to ride a unicycle. And we see that Rainmaker is just unloading everything. It's like, oh, you guys already can't handle this? I'm just getting started. It's turning up to a Category 2. And so everyone's holding on for dear life because the winds are basically just dragging them around, and they're barely able to keep a hold of anything. We see across town a random homeless man, as he says he's a Gulf War veteran, and he's holding a sign out. A woman puts some cash in his hat, and the man that she's with is just like, he's just going to turn around and spend that on drugs. And we see the man, he's got a dog, and he's like, oh, that woman was nice. The man, not so much. But, that's enough cash. We can go get ourselves some food. Let's go. So they make their way down the street, and then all of a sudden, it starts raining. But not everywhere, just over top of this man. And he seems to know what that means. So he starts running. He's freaking out. He's saying, somebody help me. He's here. And then he stops, and he's like, mister, do whatever you want to me. Just don't hurt my dog. Don't hurt Jimmy. And the man says, of course, I'm not going to hurt Jimmy. I'm not a monster. And we see him pull out a knife, aim it at the guy, and we get a obituary for Ryan Jennings, Gulf War veteran, and whatever. So we then cut back to the Movement's HQ, and Vengeance Moth rolls in with some Big Belly Burger, hands it over to the 2 cops they're keeping prisoner, and he's like, oh, here you go, guys. I didn't know what you wanted for food, so everyone loves Big Belly Burger. And the one cop, Officer Witt, he's like, this food's still warm. And he's like, well, of course, I'm not going to give you cold food. He's like, wait a minute. You're using deduction to figure out that we live close enough to a Big Belly Burger, and that's trying to lower the location. I'm going to have to be careful with you, aren't I, Officer Witt? And Witt's like, this place has clearly got its own energy that's hooked up off the grid. I'm guessing that you are the one who set that up. And she's like, no, everyone thinks that because I'm the one in the wheelchair. They think I'm automatically the smart one. I'm not. I'm the nice one, I guess. So, yeah, that's not that. And the officer points out once again, like, you're keeping us here with no trial, no intention of, like, when our sentence will be served for crimes that, I threatened that girl, but I didn't actually commit any crimes. You are significantly worse than the justice system is already in place because there's no fairness to it. And Vengeance Moth is like, I'm hearing you. Like, I register what you're saying there. So then we have the young girl, Kirsten, who, back from issue 1, she comes up and whispers something to Vengeance Moth, and Vengeance Moth is like, well, hey, look, I'm not the one deciding your thing. You got to worry about the one in charge, because you may as well be calling her Caesar. So we then see back at the fight against Rainmaker, and they basically, Virtue comes up with a plan and says, Mouse, I need you to bite. And Mouse is like, I can't get close to her. How am I supposed to? And she's like, no, not her. one of her people. She cares about them. You need to go threaten one of them. And Burden at this point is like freaking out, like, oh, guys, I can feel Satan rising within me. And it's like, okay, as long as he's going to fight for us, I don't care if it's Satan or God. Like, go nuts, buddy. So Mouse makes his way around the crowd. Burden transforms into a demon long enough to just ignore the winds and just walk right up to Rainmaker. And he's just like, God has looked away from this place, child, and now I am free to do as I wish. And Rainmaker's like, you made one mistake, demon. I'm not a Christian. And she just zaps him with lightning. But in the time that she's distracted, Mouse manages to get about to bite one of her guys. And she's just like, hey, look, we got one of your guys. We don't want to do that. We're on your side. Like, we're totally simpatico here. Can we just talk? And she's like, okay, yeah, fine. As long as you don't work for the man. It's like, no, of course we don't work for the man. We hate the man just as much as you do. Now, all we're saying is that somebody is killing people in our area that we patrol, and they all have, like, rain power, like, rain on them. We think someone is either framing you or you're doing it. Do you know what's up? And she's like, oh, yeah, no, totally. It's a guy named Cannon, James Cannon. He's super evil, and he's like gonna buy out the place and run it like a business. And poor people are just an obstacle for him to run over. And Virtue's like, oh my God, that's so evil. Why does he hate us so much? And Rainmaker's like, he doesn't hate you. He feels nothing for you, and that's all the more dangerous. So at that point, she says, all right, join us, Rainmaker. We want you as part of our group. And she says, no, I'm here for these people. I'm here to take care of them. I'm sorry. I just want to be left alone. That being said, here's my number. Give me a call. Wink, wink. And they just disappear into the mist. And she's like, I think I was being hit on there. That's weird, right? And Tremor's like, yeah, no, totally. Like, you're never going to call her. She's clearly insane. Anyway, let's get going. Turns out Catharsis somehow they figured out Catharsis in jail, and Tremor's like, we got to go take care of her. Clearly that's an issue. But we see the Virtue tucks the number away in the pocket just in case. So meanwhile, in the police precinct, Catharsis is being held in an interrogation room with his own guys guarding, and the police are just letting it happen. Or they don't know about it, technically. So we see her being beat up by James Cannon, and Catharsis is like, I just pictured something funny. You dead in an earthquake, naked and being devoured by rats. So then we see the captain of the police force, who we met back in issue 1, Captain Mears, is like, we're going to need a tank. Call in all these different favors. We're going to go in and we're going to take that part of the city back. And he's telling all this to his secretary. And then as he enters his office, Virtue's just sitting there drinking down his coffee. Like, hey, your coffee sucks. And so they start to talk, and Virtue sees that he's on edge. He's about to go for his gun. She's like, okay, hold on. First and foremost, I'm sorry I told you that your wife was cheating on you. That was a bit much. I agree. However, I want to do something that I think will be beneficial for the both of us. And he's like, what's that? I want to exchange prisoners. We'll give you back your 2 cops if you give us back our guy that you have. And the captain, unaware of what's happening in his own interrogation room, is like, we don't have one of your guys. Like, we're here to protect people like you. And Virtue's like, oh, are you now? Isn't that convenient? And so the officer starts rolling off like, we are going to shut you down. And if you stand in the way, people will be hurt and possibly even killed. Is that what you want for your group, the people that you're protecting? And so Virtue walks over to the window, opens it up, and we see a crowd of people wearing these shiny movement masks and holding protest signs. And so it's like, officer, you're the one who's mistaken. We're the ones who run this, and we will take you down if you stand in our way. Now, I want to tell you about our deal again. And that's where the issue ends off. So I'm definitely getting more of a picture this issue. That being said, there was one line of dialogue from last issue that I still feel is unresolved, where Catharsis says, I am a cop. I don't get that yet. That part still feels unresolved to me. Maybe it will eventually come up. I'm not sure, but as it stands now, it just kind of feels like out of place. And I was waiting for it this whole issue. It just never came. Everything else I'm interested in. Seems like Virtue is possibly a LGBT character. Interested to see that. That doesn't have a whole lot of representation here in the New 52, so super interested in that. Beyond that, the characters are just getting a bit more fleshed out. The tone of it, how these characters interact with each other, the police, Vengeance Moth, all that sort of stuff. It's just slowly building, and I'm curious to see at what point are we really going to get a tipping over and see how we are going to progress this story into something more than just what it feels like now is, oh, are we really so different from the police as we critique them because we do our own very brutal methods? So I want to see where we get to, hopefully past that. But overall, this issue is definitely a solid, like, 7.5. It's got some good humor. The art is okay. Not particularly a style I like, but it works in this particular issue. So yeah, 7.5. Dial H number 14, written by China Miéville, art by Alberto Ponticelli. Last issue was a whole thing with them getting the J dial. This group of dialers got the J dial, so now they're able to jump through dimensions, but it's damaged, so it's not able to fully function. This issue picks up like months later, possibly years. There have been numerous adventures in the middle that we are just not privy to. And we see that Nelson and the group have been going between all these different dimensions and like just being heroes as they're on the lookout for the Fixer and Centipede. And as they're on their way here, they see they're in a dimension that is full of frogs, and a giant fly has been terrorizing them. So Nelson turns into a ghost elephant called Elephant, like haunt, but elephant. And the one who, Dwan, the one who changes into things rapidly, he's got like a speed dial function on, he's also helping. And they take out the giant fly, and they say like, okay, everyone, you're safe. And this frog steps up and just like, oh, I knew you would help us no matter what the stories say, Nelson. And he's like, what do you mean? What stories? And be like, oh, you know, about the war and how you stole the powers of Captain Cave, and he died because of your dialing ability. But I said, oh no, you're going to save us still no matter what. And Nelson's like, okay, I got to go, kid, but I'll see you later. So he goes back to the rest of the group, and turns out that Ijad, the robot who had a dial, and like his dial was the one that could copy other abilities like 100% of the time instead of stealing them, he died, and it was because of this fly. So they were just avenging his death. And Nelson transforms back and says, hey, everyone else is talking about like this war, and like apparently this has been happening in numerous other dimensions they've been to, and they're trying to figure out like what's going on. And specifically they make the point of they have fixed the dials where it is no longer stealing abilities, it is just copying. So superheroes should not be losing their abilities anymore when these people dial, except for one of the dials that they couldn't fix. It's always a stealing one, but they just don't use that one. It's off the table. So at that point, they realize like, okay, we got to jump again. We got to head to a different dimension. We think we found a dimension that's kind of like a nexus area, and so it's going to be a good spot to show up and like be able to get to the next place where we could find the Fixer or Fixer and Centipede. And so as they're about to jump in, that little frog guy comes up to Nelson again. He's just like, wait, you don't go. Something bad is going to happen. And he's like, oh, don't worry. Nothing's going to bad happen to me. I'm a hero, remember? So they go through the portal, and the frog's like, not to you, to me. So we then get the breakdown that Ijad smashed the Fixer away when it would have killed them and put them, you know, into this like flux area that now they're just chasing after them instead. And I don't even know what is going on in half this issue. But either way, they arrive at this hub world, and it looks like it's been overtaken by a massive world-sized flood. And they arrive on top of a building that's quickly being overtaken by water. And they are attacked by a bunch of fish people. And before they can even get an idea as to what's going on here, they're like, we're not your enemies, and we're here to help. But because they're dialers, these people are automatically against them, saying the dialers are evil and they cause the wars and all that. So at that point, I think it was the E dial, the one for equipment, or was that G for gear? Can't remember. Regardless, he dials a bunch of stuff to try to get a transport, like a submarine or something, but he ends up getting an escalator that sends them through another portal into another dimension. So everyone makes their way through as best they can, but turns out that 2 of them get left behind. They aren't able to make it through the portal before it closes. And Nelson freaks out, but Roxy's like, hey, don't worry about it. They've got their dials. They're warriors. They'll be able to survive. We'll find a way to get back to them as soon as we can. So Nelson says, like, no, we got to get back. We got to dial or something like that. Open Window Man tells him, it's not going to happen. We got to move on. We have a bigger mission than this. They knew the risk going into it. They get into a little bit of a shouting match. But before they can do anything, they are immediately attacked by a robot that throws rocks. And I believe his name is actually Trebuchet. And so Roxy and Nelson transform into Moon Monkey and Pipe Cleaner. Moon Monkey's just a monkey with moon powers, and Pipe Cleaner is just a pipe cleaner. So they start trying to attack Trebuchet. They realize they don't have the best power set, though, and so Trebuchet says, all right, stand down. Meanwhile, they're put into cages and are left there for some long-ass period of time. And finally, Nelson's like, how many days are you going to keep us in here? We got to write. We got to save people. Where are the people that came with us? Because it's just Nelson, Roxy, and I think it's Batham is their name? Bansa. Bansa is in there. So Bansa's saying, like, hey, look, you think that we're these evil dialers that cause this war, but we're not. We only use dials that copy powers, not steal them, and like they're over there, like we can show you. And he tells him, no, like, your lies won't work for me, and we've got plans for your friends. But it turns out in the room is an open window, so Open Window Man shows up, and he's like, look, I could have gotten the jump on you, I could have attacked you, but I didn't. That should show that we're good, like we're not enemies. And also, there's apparently a zombie invasion on this planet. But they don't know what zombies are. So they said, like, oh, this human corpse was up and walking around, wouldn't stay dead. And Nelson's like, you have zombies? And they're like, what's a zombie? And it's like, are you kidding me? Everyone knows what zombies are. So at that point, a giant head shows up in the cloud and says, hey, this is your end. I'm sending zombies upon you. So, and it's all because this world attacked my world a long time ago, and now I've returned the favor. And so all the zombies start coming up and attacking. They get the Trebuchet says, all right, you guys are probably friends. They get their hero dials back. They transform into numerous heroes. And then all of a sudden, as they're attacking, the zombies just disappear. And it turns out this is the operator. He's shown up again, and now he's exacting revenge on all of the worlds that attacked his world. And he has a dial that can dial into apocalypses. So things like a flood or earthquakes or like asteroids or nuclear stuff or zombies. And so they have to now take care of him with a broken J dial. But turns out that Trebuchet, their entire world having known about dialers beforehand, they studied them intensely. He fixed the J dial. The broken one is now fixed, and now they're able to easily jump anywhere they want amongst all these dimensions. And so they say, like, okay, we can go to, like, the central hub. We can go to the exchange. And so they figure out, all right, what do we dial to get to the exchange? Clearly 0000. So they type that in on the dial. They all disappear. We have Trebuchet staying back because he needs to take care of the zombies just in case they do come back. And we see that the group then arrives at the exchange. And as they arrive into this area, they see Centipede standing there. And he is like, oh, yes, I'm here to welcome you. It must be nice to see a familiar face when you arrive. So that's that. Next issue is the last issue. I don't think they told the writer, I don't think they told China Miéville that was like, as of last issue, it didn't feel like we were about to go into the end game because we skipped ahead a lot here. And I can't say that like I needed to see all the interstitial stuff, but it made this a very confusing read and an already confusing book. The fact that we introduced so many characters over the last 2 issues and now they're like all gone again, save for Open Window Man and I already forgot Bata, whatever it was. Regardless, it's a very confusing read. I'm into it. I like the idea of it, but I do feel it would have been much better off with an extra like 4 issues to just explain all the things and show all the things that we've been missing, and they just assume that we would have gotten in the interstitials. So I'm going to give this one I'll give it a flat 7, and I want to give it higher, but I can't justify it with how confusing of a read it is, because it is, coming into it, it makes no sense. You got to like really stew on it for a while and figure out what in the hell they're talking about, and like refer back to the last issue. It's a mess, but it's a fun mess that has a lot of thought put into it, so gets that 7. The Phantom Stranger number 10, written by J.M.D. Matteis, art by Fernando Blanco, aka Trinity of Sin Phantom Stranger, but I'm not going to call it that. So last issue, we had the Phantom Stranger going into hell to save his wife and children, and they were freed because he was willing to sacrifice himself. Unfortunately for him, they were freed not back to the land of the living, but up to heaven, and God said, okay, in the form of a little dog, let's go. So he has a stairway coming out of hell, going up to heaven, and he's like, yeah. Let's just walk up there. I'll explain along the way. And he explains, okay, they were supposed to die. Like, the people you call a wife and children, they were supposed to die back when they were the wife and children of Philip Stark. But then you intervened, and now they were alive again. But that is against the plan, so therefore he's up. He's going up they're going to heaven. Like, that's the deal. And so if you want to go see them, we can go up and see them, but they're going to be up in heaven. Also, Sin Eater, aka Philip Stark, he's still around. You're going to have to deal with him. And he's like, oh, don't worry, I plan on dealing with him. And God's like, no, but like, that's kind of your thing now as well. You got to deal with him. Like, even if you get all your silver stuff taken care of, like, you still got to deal with him. So they make it up into heaven. And I see this huge crowd of people all standing outside the gates, which the gates are just this huge collection of walls and stairs leading all over the place. And he's like, what is this place? What's going on? And at this point, Phantom Stranger, it also just clicks for him, like, they're dead. He killed them. Like, Sin Eater killed them, and you're not bringing them back to life. They're still just dead. How dare you? I've saved them. I was willing to suffer for them. And at this point, the dog gets a little pissed off, just like, hey, look, I get it. You've been through a rough time and all that, but don't you forget who you're talking to, and you will treat me with respect. Bark, bark. So he flies off and releases a big light, and he's like, if you ever do that again, I swear to God, I'm going to throw you down in a pit darker than you have ever known. And so Phantom Stranger's like, I'm sorry, It's been an issue. I've been going through a lot recently. And it's like, yep, okay, here's the thing. I'll let you bring one of them back. And Phantom Stranger's like, oh, I couldn't help but notice you said one of them. And God's like, yep, you can bring back one of either of your children or your wife, but only one. And Phantom Stranger says, I can't pick. How dare you make me make this choice? And God's like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm letting you bring back a loved one from the dead. Sorry I'm being so unreasonable. Anyway, you're not the only person I have to deal with. I'm going to go take care of some other stuff. Zoriel. And then all of a sudden, this angel comes down and says, "Oh, hello, God. How's it going? What's happening? I'm here to serve you." And God's like, "Yeah, don't do the kneeling thing. Look, Phantom Stranger here needs some help navigating heaven. Help him get to his family. I gotta go take care of some other stuff. Peace." And so he disappears. And Zoriel explains to Phantom Stranger, like, yes, all these people standing out here on the lawn, they are the recently deceased. Some not so recent, but they've all not come to terms with the fact that they are dead. And so once they come to terms with that, they will make their way into one of the doors and find their own personal paradise. And as he is standing there getting this explanation, the babysitter, who was killed as a result of all of the stuff going on here, steps up and is just like, "Hey, Mr. Stark, hey man, what's going on? I think I'm dead. Can you take me back with you?" And Stark's like, "No, kid, I got one life I could take back, and it ain't gonna be you. I don't even know where to begin to search for them, though." And the babysitter's like, "Oh, he was, I saw them go through that door over there." And so Zoriel's like, "Yeah, no, there's a lot of souls. I haven't kept track of them. If he knows where they went, that sounds great. Let's go down that one to start." So they make their way through this doorway, and we see it starts off with very like stereotypical depictions of heaven with like clouds and angels and stuff like that. But then as you make your way deeper down this path, it becomes more of a metaphysical one with the universe sort of thing going on. And Phantom Stranger thinks like, if I wasn't so pissed off and so focused on getting my family back, I'd really like to dissect this and try to think about how heaven really works. But I have no time for that. So they finally make their way down the pathway and find a paradise, like mountains and rivers and whatnot. And we see the two kids and we see Elena and we see Philip Stark. And at that point, Phantom Stranger's like, this dick is back again. I refuse to let him ruin things again. But then Zoriel intervenes like, it's not a real him. That's their like image projection. They loved their father. They loved having him around. He's of course going to be part of this paradise. And he's like, fair enough. But can they see me? Can I go interact? It's like, yeah, but like they're currently in the space between spaces sort of thing. They're not quite as they were back on Earth, but they're also not quite one with the universe. So it's going to be a bit weird talking to them. So he steps up and he's like, hey, Elena, how's it going? But first we get an interstitial to Terrence 13, who's still really, really beaten up over the fact that he killed Phantom Stranger with the Spear of Destiny. And he's been drinking himself almost to death every night. And Question shows up again. He's like, hey, Terrence, I got a new question for you. And Terrence is like, don't. Just please don't do it. And Question's like, no, I think you're going to like this one. Do you have the courage to just die already? So we'll probably get that torn up soon enough. Back to heaven, Elena is talking to Phantom Stranger, and she's like, I don't know who you are. And he's like, no, you do. Like, really think about it. Come on, I'm get down your memories. And he's like, oh, wait, you're Joshua. You're Philip's friend. And he's like, I mean, yes, technically, but that's, come on, look into my heart. Really, really pick at what's going on here. And we see the kids run up. It's like, oh, who's that? But then they see like, oh, wait a minute, there's something wrong with this guy. He's not cool. Mom, this guy isn't cool. I don't want to talk to him. And so they get a little bit scared. And Zoriel, like, he's trying to convince them, like, hey, look, just look into my heart. Look at me. You see how much I love you. I want all of you to come with me. And Zoriel's like, that's not, you got to pick one. God said you could only pick one. And he's like, psh, screw God. God's not here. God's not watching me. I'm going to take all of them and screw anybody who tries to stop me. And he grows to like this massive size and storm clouds gather and he smacks Zoriel across the face. And he's like, all right, Elena, my kids, come on, let's go. Come with the big scary magic man. And Elena holds back and says, no, we're not going with you. And she calls him Philip. And he's like, oh, wait a minute, you remember me. You know it's me. It's like, of course I remember you. You were my husband for so long. And you were kind and caring and you were imperfect, but you indulged your wife and kids too much, but you loved us deep down. And I think you always clung on to our love just a little bit too much. And it's time for you to let us go. But I promise you that I will hold you in my heart forever. And so she gives him a kiss and then fades into the universe, fades and whatnot with the kids and saying that they're going to our new beginning. So he walks back to Zoriel and the babysitter and he's like, okay, let's go home. And of course I got to take the babysitter. Like clearly when God said I had to take one and then I ran into the babysitter, that was always going to be the case. He's not subtle. It was always that. So he takes the babysitter back and Zoriel's like, that was a good choice. You did the right thing. But be forewarned, if you ever try to take a soul out of heaven again, you will be erased from existence. And Phantom Stranger's like, is that a promise or a threat? Because I'm okay with that. So he ends up back in his bedroom along with the babysitter. Babysitter doesn't really seem to remember what's going on, but he sees Phantom Stranger just break down and cry, and he consoles him. And we see that Phantom Stranger is now stuck in his own private hell. It's a downer of an issue with a lot of big themes. I really like the big themes. That's something I've always liked about this series, is it stops and it just philosophizes for a while, and I really like that. And it's so well done. I really do enjoy this issue. I like the way that it's handling it. I don't really have much critique about it, so I won't. I'm not even going to bother. It's just a good issue. I'm going to give this one... I think I'm going to give this one an 8.5. It just doesn't quite squeak 9. 9 and up is reserved for just that little extra something special that like really just is a fun read and I just love everything about it. This one's great. It's a fantastic issue, but it just doesn't quite squeak up to that highest of highs. So Yeah, I'm into it. I'm looking forward. I think next issue might be Trinity War tie-in stuff. Not sure, but it's good. I'm enjoying it. This has been a solid arc from beginning to end because this is basically the end of the first arc. All things considered, we're like 10 issues in. It took this long, but it was good. I really do like this book. Swamp Thing number 22, written by Charles Soule, art by Kano. So last issue, we had an entire thing about some random woman who was asking for sanctuary in the green, but Swamp Thing was like, okay, look, before I deal with that, I got to go deal with this thing called Cedar. He's out in Scotland, so just cool your jets here for a while. So we pick up with Cedar, who makes his way outside of a town called Fetters Hill in Scotland, and he walks up to this elderly couple, and his face is covered with a hood, so we can't see him save for some green blotches all over his face. And he's like, excuse me, kindly old couple, if this town were to make a wish, what would it wish for? And the couple's like the town? Like, not the people, but the town? And he's like, yep, that's what I said. And he's like, it would probably want the whiskey factory back open, because that was our sole source of income as a town, and it doesn't work anymore. And he's like, fair enough. And so he takes a seed out of his bag, he blows on it, throws it in the grass, and the old couple's like, who are you? Like, what's going on? He says, oh, some people call me the Cedar. And then all of a sudden, this giant-ass tree springs up in the spot where he laid a seed. And on the branches of the tree are essentially sacks of whiskey coming off it like it's fruit. So that happened. We see 24 hours later, Swamp Thing has made his way to Scotland, and he's like, okay, the green's all messed up in that town down there. I don't know what's going on. It has something to do with that big-ass tree. I could see it from all the way up here. But if I go down there like Swamp Thing, they're going to run away. And this country of Scotland has one too many monsters already, so I got to find some sneaky way. And so we see in the forest outside of town, Swamp Thing comes in through one of the trees, but he purposely holds back rather than fully forming, and we just see an eye and an ear form on this tree. And he's peeping at the town, seeing what they're doing. And they're all gathered around this tree, partying, basically, having a fantastic time. And he's like, all right, well, that's not what I expected. Everyone's so happy and having fun. And then all of a sudden, someone comes up to the tree and says, oh, you're such a peeper. Didn't expect that. Well, maybe we should get to know each other, Alec. And it turns out it's John Constantine. And so he steps up. He's like, how about you grow yourself a body? I feel weird talking to a tree. So Swamp Thing comes out, and he's like, what are you doing here, Constantine? And he's like, oh, yeah, no, I heard about this town, and they had some sort of magic thing going on. I figured I'd check it out. And Constantine thinks it's Swamp Thing. He's like, oh, I'm surprised that you're willing to come down on the side of people and give them something fun for a change. And Swamp Thing's like, wasn't me. It's a guy named Cedar. He's the one doing it. He's messing with the green, and I don't like it. I don't like what he's doing. And Constantine points out, like, well, if he's able to mess with it to the point where it's bothering you, he seems like he's a force to be reckoned with. And Swamp Thing just takes a beat and looks at him and says, like, son of a bitch, it's you, isn't it? And he grabs Constantine and picks him up and be like, you're the Cedar. You know magic, and you just happen to be here. It's all too perfect. I know it's you. And Constantine says, put me down in special red font. And for some reason, Swamp Thing has to. He absolutely cannot resist putting down Constantine. And Constantine's like, okay, here's the thing. I'm not Cedar, because if I have the ability to make you do anything, I would have told you to, like, leave and never come back. But I just told you to put me down. Secondly, I'm telling you now as a weakness of mine, I can't do that trick on you ever again. Like, that's a one and done. You're safe from that forever. Third off, I just heard about it. I felt this magic in the system, and I wanted to come check it out. Also, it's whiskey. That's nice. Like, I'm going to go ahead and check that out. So he furthermore puts forward that despite the fact that they barely know each other, quote unquote, apparently, Constantine does want to be friends with Alec Holland again. And I think that's because the what was his name? Alan Moore run still technically kind of happened in continuity in this, because it was a whole extra thing before issue 1 of this book. Regardless, Swamp Thing's like, fine, whatever. Like, we can talk, we can see if we can be friends or whatnot, but this tree has to go. And Constantine says, like, now hold on, look, they're having fun. Like, what's the big deal? If it's good for these people, like, this town is going to die if you take away this tree. they have a chance at like coming back and doing something here. Isn't that worth that? Like, do you have any humanity left inside you at all? And we see them just having fun, taking sips of the drink. And then all of a sudden, one of the guys says, hey, leave some for the rest of us. And starts to like yank his arm away from the tap. And then he gets kicked in the balls. And everyone starts laughing at his misfortune, including the guy who kicked him. But then all of a sudden, he gets this menacing like look in his eye, and he starts stomping on the guy's head and like cracking his skull. And all the other people are just looking down, smiling with this menacing grin as they're basically killing each other. And Swamp Thing says, like, look, of all people, you should understand, this is something, there's a balance, and you can't tip over the balance. This is tipping the balance too far in one direction. I have to put a stop to it to get the green back in order. And Constantine takes a drag of his cigarette, and he's like, look, all I understand is that you're a lot quicker to come down on the side of plants than you are people, and I think that's something you need to analyze, Alec. And Swamp Thing says, whatever. It's not even whiskey. Like, whiskey comes from barley. Do you see any barley on that tree? And as he looks back over and sees everyone killing each other, he's like, oh no, I need to intervene right now. You see this, Constantine? This is why we can't have nice things. And Constantine basically pulls out a vial from his shirt and says, I could help you right now, Alec, but I'm not. Because I had a few drinks from that tree, and whatever it is, whiskey or not, it's damn good. And I'm not going to let you get rid of it. And he throws this vial to the ground, and it sends Constantine into just this huge amount of pain. He's just screaming in agony. And Constantine walks his way over to the town. We see that Swamp Thing is unable to feel the green anymore. He's just completely cut off from it for some reason. But the body that he's in still has its power. So he's trying to figure out what to do with that. But Constantine's like, oh, looks like you're all done. Someone's going to take you out to the curb like all the other long clippings. And so Constantine makes his way back into the town where everyone's like either passed out or still bloodthirsty. He walks his way in, smashes a jug, pulls out a piece of glass in the shape of a crown, puts it on his head. He says, I crown myself John Constantine the First. My first order of business with this city of Fetters Hill, playtime. And he points to Constantine, and they all start tearing him apart, tree branch from tree branch. And that's the issue. It's heavy. It's a big issue. I feel like this one, all the prior issues kind of went really deep into this idea of like, what is the responsibility of Swamp Thing to mankind and whether or not he has any. This one, it touches on it, but it just doesn't quite go deep enough. It just stops at that surface layer of like, no, there's a balance. And I even think Constantine would have been a great character to analyze all of that with, because Constantine is such a dick. Like he just does things self-serving, so it's almost like, the whole with great power comes great responsibility. If Constantine has this great magical power, what is his responsibility to mankind? But they just seem, maybe they're going to get it next issue or even the issue after that, but for this particular issue, they just kind of dance around the idea of, well, the green has a balance and we can't mess with that. It seems more so the idea of Swamp Thing's now cut off from the green, which is horrible, but it's also like the third time this has happened, so I'm sure we'll get it fixed soon enough. But regardless, it's a solid issue. Either way, maybe a bit out of character for Constantine, but beyond that, fine. So I'm going to give this one a 7.5. I do enjoy it. I think the art is good, and it's got me pumped for whatever the next issue is going to bring. And that's it. That's all the comics that came out from DC Comics this July 3rd, 2013. And I'm able to see the YouTube video analytics on this stuff. Like, I'm able to see how many people tune in for each comic specifically, which, by the way, I don't think anybody has ever actually heard me talk about Superboy, which is deeply disheartening to me. But regardless, when it gets to this part of the show, nobody checks this out. I could literally say anything here. It might be different with audio people, because you audio people, you're listening to it. You're willing to give me more leeway when I get to the end because you aren't able to see on screen that it's over. But for video people, I could say like, oh yeah, if you leave a certain comment in the comments, I'll give you $1,000. I won't. That is an example and not something that's true, but I could, and I would never run out of money. So Anyway, that's a long and winding way to say there are comics next week, so let's talk about what those are. Those are, in no particular order, Batman, Batgirl, Nightwing, Superman Unchained, Green Lantern Corps, Threshold, Justice League, Katana, World's Finest, Suicide Squad, and Demon Knights. But the biggest one out of those is Justice League, because that is officially part 1 of Trinity War. The big thing that the entire New 52 has been moving to for the past 2 years. So it better be goddamned worth it. Spoiler. I remember reading Trinity War once, like 5 years ago when I first started collecting this stuff, and I don't remember what happened. So that's not a good sign for it leaving a lasting impression on me. So we'll see what happens on the second go around, I suppose. But that'll do it for me. If you have anything to say about any of the comics I talked about, blah, 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 leave a comment. Just leave you know what? Leave a comment and I will give you one of those little hearts on YouTube where it's like, oh, the creator of this video loved this comment. I will love your comment. As long as it is not saying just vile and hateful crap, I will give it a heart. And even then, I can be convinced. So no, I can't actually. Don't test me on that. Anyway, that's going to do it for me. Thank you very much for watching, listening, however it is you consume this podcast. Check us out on Patreon and all those other places. And always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.